and we weren't even smoking. We fit a description. My buddy had weed on him, and we got about 9 guns drawn on us, thrown up against fences, guns to our face. I was like 16 years old. It scared the hell out of me. No lie, I cried. I thought I was gonna die. Um, Literally, they told me if I moved a step, they'd shoot me, and it was the biggest wake up call for me because I didn't ever think that would happen to me. Being stubborn a little bit where I live, and that like woke me up a lot too when I was 16. That like anything can happen to you, and another reason why I never take life for granted. Um, but the biggest encounter with law enforcement was when I just turned 18. Me and a friend that I worked with at a restaurant, we were dropping another friend off in New Jersey, and I had a grinder. It was empty in his car. Um, and little to me, I didn't know he had weed on him. And we got pulled over for tinted windows, and I was ripped out of the car first by their captain, who was a female. And I have family in law enforcement, so I understand. But the way I was ripped out of the car and searched, socks taken off on the side of a road, um, acted like I was a felon. The first thing they asked me was I going to buy heroin in Camden County in Camden? And I told the cop I'm from Philadelphia. I would not go to Camden. I don't buy heroin. I'm not a heroin addict. I have epilepsy. Um, and they didn't care. They threw me on the side of the road. They let me sit there for no reason. They checked the grinder. There was nothing in it. They arrested me for possession for a grinder and a bowl. Yep. And for no, yeah. And I literally was treated like a.
What year was this?
This was 2015.
Okay.
Yep. And it it was tough. I had to go home and explain why I was out so late because a buddy of mine and me decided to drop a friend off, and we were pulled over for tinted windows, and I get arrested. And then part of me, he told the cops to search his car. Little did he know he had a weed in there that he forgot about, so they arrested him for a DUI, um, which ruined the friendship.
He consented to a search.
He consented to a search, said
Okay.
he had nothing in there, so they arrested him. But I didn't consent to any search. They literally ripped me out first before they even went to the side of his car. They said I was fidgeting with stuff, and ripped me out of the car, patted me down, had a male pat me down. Um, yeah, I spent that night in their holding cell till about 7:30 with sleep deprived epilepsy. They didn't give a shit. They didn't care at all, at all. Um, and the grinder they took had keef in it, which is the when you grind up weed, keef falls off the trichomes. They asked me if it was green cocaine. That's how smart these cops were in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. And they're the biggest county at the time. They were the biggest county for drug bust, and that's what they made their claim to fame on. Um,
What were you charged eventually, or there was
yeah, I
no?
was charged, but I pled it down. I brought a lawyer with me because I already knew. I
Okay.
was charged, and I pled it all down because in New Jersey, I brought a lawyer from Philadelphia with me who dealt with. I brought a labor union lawyer who dealt with stuff in New Jersey, and he told me, "You're not getting out of this." He said, "You can pay the fine, we'll plead it down, but these guys golf together on the weekends. They're in on this. This is what they do for a living. This is how they make their overtime money. This is how they make their money." So it
Yeah.
is what it is. And again, that's what put me on to that at 18. They're complex of these little counties, especially in these recreational states. No, they wait and they pry on people because I
Yeah.
have family in law enforcement. So it changed a lot. I mean, I'm also raised by a cop that spoke marijuana up. People don't understand it. I'm from a very different background. Like my father rather me smoke marijuana than get into any other drug. Like he saw the plus size of marijuana. His thing was always if I see two stoners, they're gonna eat donuts together and have some fun and chill. When you see two alcoholics, they're usually fist fighting after they're drunk, you know? And I was happy I was raised like that. And most people that are raised by a cop, they don't understand that. Cops are very stern and this and that. My dad was upset. my grandparents were upset. It hurt big time. But my biggest male figure was my grandfather, and they don't believe in marijuana. They're from the 40s. They're from reefer madness days, and they don't believe in that. So I was told I was a dope head and a hippie. And when I was just a hardworking kid, I was trying to find myself and find the medical benefits of marijuana. And that goes as far as being told by my epileptic neurologist at one of my hospitals that that won't help you. Sorry, because it doesn't matter to them. Whoever pays them gets that's who they want to put you off on, you know?
I can
Let's
identify with that. I have MS, as you may know, and I get judged by doctors a lot, and you don't get a lot of information. Yeah.
I mean, this is a head doctor I see maybe once every 3 years, bewildered that I want to get a marijuana card. And I said, you know what? I'll go to my primary doctor that I've been seeing for 20 something years that knows me as a person. He'll get me a marijuana card. Fine. It's just so funny that they want to put you on all their stuff, but they can't approve something. And this guy was an older guy. He knows the positives of marijuana. Okay. And they want to fight with you about it like I'm a junkie. Oh, that's another thing. I was called a junkie by the cops. Oh yeah, because I have dark eyes, because I have sleep deprived epilepsy. So I've heard it all before. I mean, on top of the are you a pot smoker, this and that, I've been stigmatized at a young age because I always tried marijuana and it helped me. It has. The terpenes in marijuana have helped me relax myself, and I have a sleep deprivation epilepsy. There's a terpene in marijuana called myrcene that will literally sedate you and relax you. I use the terpenes in the marijuana plant to its advantage. How I was taught in PA, these are medical benefits. And that's how it's going across the country now. Nobody wants top percentage stuff. They want to make sure they're honing in on what the terpene for their illness is or for what they like to feel.
I love to hear that. I love to hear that because my worry is that the THC is pushed too much, and that's somebody that's just learning about this. That could really turn you off, and it doesn't work, doesn't work properly. Like for myself with MS, I don't know about epilepsy, but I know that I learned that isolates, I can't have isolates because they make my pain shoot through the roof.
Right.
Yeah. Cannabis changed my life like tremendously. And I feel betrayed by the lack of information over the years and the propaganda that kept me away from it because
Yep.
I suffered for years because I didn't think that that was good for me.
This is going to be a different day and age. I'm telling you this. And for us, it'd be a disservice to me, like you just said, for me to work in the industry for 8 years and not spread the word of what I saw and what I encountered over the years, whether that be 6 females get fired in one day at one of the dispensaries I worked at, or it get robbed and no manager. A dispensary I worked at got robbed during the riots in 2020. Nobody was hurt. I couldn't hear from a GM. I was the supervisor. I couldn't get in touch with a GM, couldn't get in touch with the owners, couldn't get in touch with HR. Funny, and they definitely knew who to call when the building was shut down because they got all their employees out. Just a lot of this stuff we have to make sure people know because we would be doing a disservice. I have so much time in this industry, and not a lot of people do from multiple ways. And I I had a pact with myself. Me and my best friend, we had a pact at 18. We said we're going to do this. He had seizures. I have epilepsy. He said I'm going to grow, and you go into retail, and we're going to change this. And that's what we're doing because we believe in it. We've been doing it we're going to be 30, and that was at 18.
I love it.
So my role in cannabis is actually, in my opinion, one of the most pivotal roles right now because we're a growing industry. There's no cannabis culture right now in retail dispensaries and manufacturing and cultivation as far as workers' rights, employment rights, uh, and employment career advancement, right? People go into a job and want to have a career in it. They want to make sure they're taken care of. They want to take care of themselves and their family and just work hard. This is a job where you're seeing this industry, you're seeing people that are taking pay cuts, leaving career jobs because they love the passion of the plant, whether they like to grow, whether they like to smoke it, whether they like to sell it, whether it's medicine for them. So what our entire union does around the country is fights for workers' rights, whether that's PTO, workplace employment discrimination, management and problems, fighting for better wages, contracts. Like we get employment and workers set up with contracts that are 3 years long, and we make sure there always increases in them. When most of these companies, I worked in the industry for 8 years. I know how a lot of these, as they call them, MSOs, the multi-state operators, run. I worked for a lot of them. They cut their losses. They're all in the stock trade. They trade they have their prices out there in the Canadian stock market. So when it comes down to it, they cut 8, 9 people every time the quarters come up, and they're firing people, and they're never bringing people back, and it's constant. So it turns into a kind of like a hamster wheel, of the employment gets cut, and then the employees see that, and there's no culture built, and it turns into like a restaurant culture where everybody's jumping job to job. And in my opinion, for me, it's the biggest disservice to this industry. When we're fighting here, and most of these people had issues, they were locked up, incarcerated. All they want to do is make a good living off of this. And then, in my opinion, people get exploited because these companies come in and they exploit workers. They have them working 45, 50 hours. They tell them, oh, you can be great. You have a marketing degree. Why don't you do this for us? They don't pay them, and they find every which way to use these workers. And in a lot of cases, it's despicable, like the cultivation workers, they're considered agriculture workers, so they're not allowed to unionize in some of these facilities under the government rules, so they have no law, they have no regulation. So it goes back to that, like, work in the cornfields type stuff. And it's like, this is not what this industry was there for. Like, we have mom and pops in this state, and they want to survive, and then the big operators come in, whether, and a lot of these companies too, like, these companies are owned by grandfathers of Jack Daniels, which is GTI, and all these big alcoholic and pharmacy companies are coming in, and they're exploiting. So I will say it depends, because we see a lot of differences from the retail dispensary to the cultivation and manufacturing. So the cultivation is where they're growing everything. Manufacturing is where they're packaging all these pre-rolls up in the packages and the gummies and all that stuff. So they definitely have a different sector on different things. In the dispensaries, it's a lot of issues with, like, he said, she said. It's very high school drama stuff. Who's sleeping with who? And honestly, businesses shouldn't be ran like that. And they're bringing people in. They're paying high. So a lot of the dispensaries I deal with, management brings a friend in and they're paying them $20 instead of the, and most people are getting paid $16 that have been there for 2 years. I see a lot of that. I see a lot of, honestly, especially with a lot of these companies where the entire team grows together and someone gets promoted after 2 years. There's a lot of management harassment. You know, I deal with cases that people don't get treated like humans because their management feels as though they're not human beings because they're managers now. And that's another big thing. Managements in these dispensaries, these corporate companies, let them get away with anything, and they'll have their lawyers back them. You know, whether you have a disability, and they disregard you, and they'll fight it to the death of them. And they're exposed by management in a lot of these MSO companies and these multi-state operating companies that know that you're just a number, and I've worked in over 8, 9 dispensaries over the past 8.5 years, whether that been in management teams and supervising and just as a bud tender. I worked my way up from the bottom up, and I worked for 4 mom and pops. I was on a team that would go across the country and open stores up. To me, they exploit workers, and the dispensaries love to exploit workers. And on the flip side, the whole other spectrum of that is the cultivations and these manufacturing sites. We have some sites here in New Jersey that are using OSHA grade 4 hazardous cleaning materials, and we have multiple people in some of these places spitting blood up, and their corporate companies are fighting them. And these are corporate companies that are across multiple states, Michigan, PA, like Illinois, and they'll fight these people to the death of them. And they know they're spitting blood up, and they know they're in the hospital. When there's 20 people getting sick and need inhalers and have asthmatic attacks, there's an issue there, And then when we have to come in and fight these people, because the employees don't know anything, they're like, oh, well, maybe I just need my job. I need to work. And they're exploiting these people. And they don't realize that there's cases out there for these type of things.
there's protections.
How do you advocate for people then? Like, so
So there's a lot of different ways. I mean,
yeah,
we're out at
something recent maybe that
or
you,
we're out at events like this weekend. We'll be at an event on Sunday at the American Dream Mall just for cannabis information with a bunch of advocacy groups, cannademics. They're gonna have a state congressman there in the state of New Jersey. So that's gonna be a big thing. We're always at um, Thursday. Our team was with the Young Democrats of the environmental study. So we were trying to reach out to and there was multiple groups in this one meeting Thursday or Wednesday. I apologize. And just trying to spread the word to young people that are getting into this industry, whether that's going out. We do expungement clinics every month, pardon me. And that's like a big thing with us. We do expungement clinics to help people because why would we fight for workers' rights and not want to help the people that are in prison and that got arrested for all this stuff? Because right now, what we're seeing, and you were at that DC policy event, and Kyle Page from Last Prisoner Project, who we work personally with, he said it clear on stage and everybody got up and clapped. It's new age slavery in this country where they want to prey on cannabis users because they're the easiest ones to be able to clean your prisons out, to make you sandwiches, to do this and to do that, to make the clothes. They're not going to put a felon that murdered 5 people go and make peanut butter and jellies, like, so this is a new age thing that in this industry that's only been around for 20 years. We have to be there every day, whether that's being an activist on the floor at events. And our team's almost 8 people deep now. And we have half of the team up in North Jersey, half of us down in South Jersey. Most of these activist events start up in North Jersey, and a lot of this is up in North Jersey. We have a lot of lawyers up there that want to do these expungement clinics. So we're always running stuff in North Jersey with workers. What can they help with? I mean, I would always equate it to like where you worked before, right? If anybody else had a job in an industry where they know they're protected, just remember that most of these cannabis dispensary workers, you'll see it too if you go into a dispensary. I see some of it in South Jersey. Um, I walked up and I was dealing with a bud tender, and his tip jar said, "This is pizza for me and my 2 sons tonight." Now, that shouldn't even be on a dispensary tip jar because he should be making enough to pay for his sons to be able to eat. And that's where the issue lies. I would just try to talk to every bud tender because a lot of these issues are in the dispensaries. We have young people. They're fresh out of college. They're trying to pay their debt off. They just want money. They have no idea. They're naive. They're young. I was the same way when I was young. I had no idea. I was just lucky. I was working in Philadelphia. I lived in Philadelphia, and unions were very prevalent there. Now, when you come to certain places, unions are not prevalent. I'm from the city of Philadelphia where you either are a union worker to help your family out or you work for the city of Philadelphia, whether as a cop or firefighter. You work in one.
that's very different. So yeah, so that is a big piece of it because here I'm in Virginia, a southern state. In southern states, this is a right to work state. It does not matter. They can fire you for anything, for any reason. And so they don't like unions down here,
No, and you know what? And this is the biggest issue. I think you're going to see a big time political change with a lot of these young kids too, because they start to see that. They know a lot of people are starting to know what right to work is, especially with this presidential, with the office, because they push very much right to work with a lot of these business guys, whether that's the guy from Raising Cane's and stuff like that. So we're always in for a battle. Literally, I always tell our team, like, and my boss says it too. We always have our gloves on because we're battling from every which way, whether that's against the MSO companies, against the culture that we have to change, and I have to fight against certain people to change the culture.
Give me an example of a win that you remember as something that you really helped somebody, and you don't have to use names or anything like that. Just like give me an example.
Yeah, just recently, I mean, this is dear to my heart because I have epilepsy. So I love cannabis, but I love people. I'm always going to help people no matter what. I'll stop and help anybody. Um, I love people and how different they are and how amazing people are. And at this dispensary, I was dealing with an issue where this gentleman had a grand mal seizure for the first time. 15 minutes on the floor. And as an epileptic, I know that's very serious. You could die, your heart could stop, your brain loses oxygen. Um, and no one helped him. They sat there, they watched him. Management told nobody to touch him. He sat there straight on his back. No one put him on his side. The management decided not to call his emergency contact because they lost the information. And this is what I mean about the culture, because this is a manager that started as a bud tender with the same bud tender that got sick. Now, she probably just doesn't like him, or they just don't like that person. And they don't see them as a human being. And that's an issue to me, because that guy sat on the floor and had a grand mal seizure for 15 minutes while people tried to help him and they were hollered at. And somebody, a worker, had to go into his pocket to grab his phone to contact the family friend. And a lot of this stuff is people don't realize that I have to go in there and do stuff outside of my job duties, just as a human being, like post ADA paperwork for epileptic now that's diagnosed. And there's multiple epileptics in there, and they're having a hard time getting their schedules changed for doctor's visits. And this is what they do, you know? And it's a shame, because where I come from in Philly, again, where I was saying, it was pretty great with the mayor we had at one point. You had to have a schedule out in 2 weeks in advance for people that work in retail, because people weren't able to get doctor's visits and to do their groceries and get dentist visits, because we work paycheck to paycheck. And to give somebody a schedule on a Friday and tell them they need to work on a Sunday is ridiculous, you know? So I helped this guy out. I made sure he had all of his answers. I gave him answers as far as, here's your ADA compliance paperwork. This is what you need to know for yourself. And that's not even as a union rep. That's just as a person. Because when I heard this, talking to them as a customer, I went in saying, hey guys, how are you? I want to see if you're cool. And I hear this, and I'm like, oh, well, I'll be back on Wednesday. I got all of the paperwork for him, all of his ADA paperwork, a big sheet in the back to tell them if there's a seizure, how to proceed with the seizure, and a 5-step guideline. And here are your accommodations you can use through the ADA and the EEOC. And the kid's 20 something years old. He's a very young kid. I saw myself in him. I had my last seizure at 20, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I was working 2 jobs. I was going to college. He has very personal issues going on. That's probably leading into it with the stress on top of the job. And to sit there on the floor for 15 minutes and nobody turning you on your side, to get sick, to be in a hospital for 4 weeks, you know, hearing that type of stuff. And I turn around and I tell him, if you ever need a ride to the doctors or an epilepsy doctor recommendation or anything like that, because it's hard. And I understand. I know the medicine he's on. I was on it before. It's no joke. And for people to pry at you and complain, you can snap. It's not easy with certain medications, and they don't take that into consideration. A lot of these people.
I appreciate that. I thank you so much. So that's wonderful. It's fascinating that, to me, that and we can't forget this, you know, and I myself included, you know, that this is why it's great to have you on here, is because here we are fighting for all these other things that we're focused on, you know, and then we forget what, oh, we got to have a union. Oh man, we got to have workers' rights, you know, like, wait, that's important too. And it's interesting because, you know, you take the cannabis industry, we need all the things that any other industry needs, but we're still on top of that fighting for the rights just to have cannabis.
Yeah.
So we can't forget that there are those, you know, those things. Thank you so much, Adrian, for doing what you do. That's amazing, and thank you for helping people like that. You know, that's wonderful, and I hope that continues to spread. Okay. If you could give your 16-year-old self one piece of advice, what would it be, and would you have listened?
Okay, that's a good one. I like that one a lot, actually. Yeah, because you know what? I would tell my 16-year-old self that there's going to be, and I heard it all the time, but I just didn't understand it, that adversity makes you stronger. Now, this comes back to what I deal with now, that there's always adversity every day. I'm always going to come up with a problem. There's always going to be issues. And the only way through it is to just see through it. You have to just put on your gloves, like I said, and pound down. And I learned that the hard way because I had epilepsy. So I was always thought, I didn't know what triggered it at first. I was on different medications. If I just told my 16-year-old self is everything's going to be okay if you take care of yourself, and there's going to be ebbs and flows, and you just take it, you know, And I definitely wish I would have listened. I know I would have listened to that, because deep down inside, I'm always going to be a hard worker. The people motivate me. When I know there's people out there that are getting done wrong, and there's people out there that are getting fired for no reason, and sorry about that, and just the misjustices in the country, and they're every day, and I'm never going to stop fighting, because like I said, I love people. So I definitely would probably heed that advice, and I know I would. I don't take any day like I have the next one. I live the fullest every single day from what I lived with. I woke up one day and I just started dropping out with seizures at 13. And they didn't know. So, and also a little background about myself. My little brother had cancer at like 3.5 years old, stage 4 rhabdomyosarcoma. And it wasn't a good bet, but I watched him fight every day. And along with him fighting in the same hospital I was in, so I was in the neurology ward and he was in the cancer ward. Um, and we would battle it out. And all I saw was battling, because my mom and dad battled every day. You know, my dad works for the city of Philadelphia. Like, he battles every day and helps people. Um, and there was no giving up in me ever. So I live every day to the fullest. And there's never a day where I'm not going to go outside and say, it's beautiful out. This is the best thing in the world, to be alive and to be able to wake up and say, wow, look at the world, you know? And the second biggest thing for me, I think, I know this is a little weird, you probably don't see it because I have my picture up, is I'm a big sports fanatic of Philadelphia. I'll pop my little screen off real quick. Um, yeah, let me get my background off. None. Yeah, I have all all my
Okay.
stuff behind me in my kitchen real quick, and then I have a whole man cave of Philadelphia sports. So I'm a big uh, history buff on sports, and dating back to like baseball from like the 1800s, and just history of like sports in general. And that goes for all sports, whether it's baseball, soccer, football, or my big three sports. So I love sports and nature, and just I think that just staying active and keeping yourself up in the world and